Okay, so good evening, everyone. Uh, this is your this is your first class. I mean, very first class with Dr. Pritesh Chakraborty sir. For your brief information, he has recently joined our department as a resource person, and hopefully, for coming few years, he will be with us and help you and the upcoming students. So, for the time being, this semester he will deal with you few topics, and here are the topics like Saussure and Foucault from critical theory. These topics he is going to take, and poems by Emily Dickinson and Sylvia Plath. These two poets are there, and in translation we have Amar Jibon and the Wife Slater. So total around six topics he will be doing. So since we have very brief time, and let's not waste more time, but for your information, let me say a few words about him. Like, currently he is working as an assistant professor in Acharya Sukumar Sen Mahavidyalaya, which is under Bardhaman University, and for the time being he has achieved so many uh, research works. He has done so many lectures and presentations and publications. So I believe his association with our department, with you, with us, will be fruitful one. So let's welcome Dr. Pritesh Chakraborty sir. Hope all of you will enjoy his classes. All right. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for introducing me in such a great way. And I will try my best to give my best um, so that the students might get some information, some useful information from me, and we will try to make the classes as enjoyable as possible. So, as ma'am told all of you, that I will be taking up a few assignments, and the first assignment, according to the portions allotted to me, includes Saussure's work under the broad category of linguistics and narratology, Saussure's course in general linguistics. So I think you already have the text with you. Ma'am, would you confirm that if they have been provided with the text?
Yes, I have already provided the text in their WhatsApp group. I believe all of them have a copy of the same text.
Okay, great. So
Yes.
I will be talking about a section. I will be talking about just a selection from his seminal work, which was not really his own work. He did not write or publish it on his own. Rather, it was compiled from a series of lectures that he gave in his institute. It was compiled from the notes that the students and his colleagues had managed to salvage from the class notes that the students were taking. So it's always important that you take notes as well. Who knows, my work might also be published thanks to you for taking notes, and then my colleagues compiling them into a work that came to influence a lot of theory, a lot of later day theories, modern theories, including structuralism. So let us talk a little bit about Saussure and what I provided, what I wanted you to talk about, what I wanted you to learn, what I wanted you to go through was a bit from Norton Critical Anthology, where Saussure's introduction is briefly mentioned, and also the selection of the text, course in general linguistics, which was of course initially published in French, and then it was translated into English, and it was published in 1915 or 16. The dates are not really very clear for me at this point in time, but it was during the middle of the second decade of 1900 that the work, course in general linguistics, was published. And let us, if you have the text, would you please go to the same, and we can just read together. We can just go through the introduction in a brief manner, so that we can yeah, sure, no problem. Thank you for being there and introducing me. I understand you have other more important things to do. So yes, we can go to the text while ma'am leaves us for the time being. And I think we have the same text over here, which begins with the name of Ferdinand de Saussure and the years he was active, 1857 to 1913. And as I said, the book was posthumously published. It was published somewhere in 1915 or 16, depending upon the book you're reading. Some say it's 1915, some say it's 1916. And if you can look at the text, if you have the text in front of you, we can see that it is mentioned over here and very clearly that Ferdinand de Saussure gave birth to structuralism by means of a book he never wrote. So I already told you about this, that he did not actively write or type the book himself, but it was compiled from the notes that the students acquired over a period of time, and the colleagues helped the students publish that particular work into a book of theory, which later came to be known as structuralism. So the course in general linguistics is based on student notes, was compiled by colleagues in 1916. Okay, so it's 1916 after Saussure's death. So he was born into this Swiss family. He was a Swiss person, and there is no biography. I mean, when Norton Critical Anthology was written at that time, Saussure did not have any biography. I know, and there are now maybe biographies on Saussure, but back then, when Norton Critical Anthology was written, when this book was written, they did not know of any biography that was written on him. So he is also known as the father of modern linguistics, and this term in itself is a little patriarchal and giving rise to one of the arguments against structuralism, that structuralism itself is kind of giving into the binary opposites that it talks about. So it was actually he who led to this change, in fact a huge change, a revolutionary change in the way in which language was studied. Language was studied in some way before Saussure's book came out and was read widely, and then there was a change in which in the way in which we or the scholars, other people who were interested in linguistics, who were interested in language, began to see language as in a very different light after the introduction of structuralism. So as it is being mentioned that and you might be pleasantly surprised to see that the European study of languages was revolutionized by the encounter with Sanskrit. So the language of Sanskrit actually led to a renewed interest in ancient languages, including Greek, Latin, and other such ancient languages. And if you remember, Sir William Jones was the person who propounded a theory that there could be a universal language. There could be a language from which all languages took their birth. But that theory is under debate still, and it will be under debate because William Jones could not produce much empirical data, much empirical details on whether there was really something like a proto language. But it has been proved time and again that English, Sanskrit, Greek, Latin, they are the Indo-European family of languages, which is also written over here, and they were also known as the Proto-Indo-European languages. That meant that they belonged to the same language group, and many of the words, many of the elements of the language are still have some kind of similarity between each other, among each other. For example, PG3, which is a Sanskrit word for father, and in Latin, father is known as Peter. So Peter and Peter and Pitri, they have a kind of a similarity. So this similarity was found out was astonishingly it astonishingly changed the way we looked at, or the scholars looked at, the Indo-European family of languages. and and another change, another massive change was supposed to be brought out by Saussure over a period of time. Now, you see, we need to establish a context on which Saussure was working. So, if you look at page number 957 and the third line from the first from the beginning, it's written: comparative philologists sought to map language as comparative anatomists had mapped organisms. But the generation of Saussure's teachers, the neo-grammarians, had begun to explore the rules of affinity and transformation in a more truly historical way. Saussure studied historical linguistics with some of them at the University of Leipzig, where he published his only book, which is in French, Memoir on the Primitive System of Vowels in Indo-European Languages in 1878. Um, so his and he contributed to the discovery of an unknown vowel, which is not really very helpful for our understanding right here. Now, in this introduction, we also find briefly about his life and whatever he was doing. So the course in general linguistics was actually started forming when he entered into this professorship in the University of Geneva in 1891, and from there on till the death of his till his death, he was talking about this historical and comparative and structural linguistics. So he was, of course, whenever a new generation of scholars is born, they are dissatisfied with whatever was happening earlier, and they wanted to do something new. They wanted to do something new they wanted to do something in a new way, so that whatever was missing in the earlier data, in the earlier research, would be covered, and we would be able to understand as to why something had happened, as and when it has happened. So I'm sorry, I just went right into the text because I thought I had lesser time than I think I have. So I would like to establish a few, now I won't say these are rules, but these are guidelines, that whenever you feel that you are not following me, that you are facing some difficulty in understanding whatever I am saying, it might be because my rate of speech is too high, because of the way in which I pronounce. If anything is troubling you, you can just unmute and ask me to repeat, or ask me to slow down, or you can just tell me that this is the problem, this is where I cannot understand you, or this is where I lost you. You can always come back and talk to me. Since we are not too many people here, we are 23, I don't think it will create a lot of trouble if we talk in a kind of an individual way, if we talk to each other in a one-to-one on a one-to-one basis, because when we are dealing with theories, my sole aim is to make you understand the theory. And to do that, if need be, I would on from your if you ask me to do that, or if you permit me to do that, I will change my language to Bengali, because I guess most of us here are Bengalis, or they can understand Bengali, because there are some critical points at which we need to shift to a different language, to a different approach, different style, in order to make you understand the thing that I want to talk about in a better way. But if you think that no, you want to understand the whole thing in English itself, and vernacular is a kind of a no, vernacular is not allowed, you can tell me, because I am here for the first time, I'm dealing with you for the first time. I do not know what is okay and what is not. So you will guide me on every step as to how I can progress. Secondly, in my classes, no question is a stupid question. I mean, you can ask me anything related to Saussure, related to theory, related to structuralism, related to linguistics, or you can ask me something which is completely unrelated, and I will take the call on whether I can answer it or not, because I don't see that I will be able to answer all of your questions, but I'll try to answer as many as possible. I will try to clear as many doubts as possible. Okay, so these are one or two things that I wanted to tell you. Another thing is that since this is a 1 hour class, and I understand that you had a long day, um, and my lecture is boring, and we are online, so there are a lot of impediments in the learning process. So what you can do is, if you feel hungry, since you're on mute, you can chomp on the chips or whatever you have at your disposal. I hope that does not make you hungrier than you were earlier. You can sip your tea, you can eat anything you like to do. If you have like earplugs, you can put them on and you can take a walk around your house, if the network coverage permits that. You can I mean, this is not the time to sleep, but if you feel sleepy, tell me. I'll try to incorporate some jokes, or I'll try to incorporate some Hindi songs to keep you awake. Okay. Well, that is a poor effort from my part to make the class interesting, but I'll try to make you as interested in the topic as much as possible. And you can also give me tips, you can also tell me what to do, like what would you like to do, how would you like to approach the concept or the text. Having said that, I would like to go back to Saussure. If you do not have any questions already, if you do not have any suggestions already, if you have them, you can mention them in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself, introduce yourself, or not introduce yourself because I can see your name, and you can tell me to do this or do that, or not to do this or do that. Okay, so let us go back to Saussure, and try to understand that why was he not satisfied by the theories that existed earlier about language. So one of the basic things that existed in the theories of language, or as far as language was theories, one of the theories was that language could be absolute, like language is something that is innate. Language is something that somebody is born with. Language is not something that is relative. I mean, English or French, depending upon where you are in Europe, language was something that was considered to be something accurate, something more absolute, something that can that meant something, that was actually a point of a reference. Language was something in itself. But these theories, these ideas, these dominant beliefs did not really capture Saussure's imagination, and he wanted to understand as to why things are and how things are. So his main points, his main ideas, his basic aspects, the basic aspects that you find in course in general linguistics will be discussed in this class, and we will see as to how these ideas were different, or how these ideas were path breaking as far as Saussure's contribution to the linguistic theory is concerned. So if you can come to the end of page number 957, we have something which says Saussure's own theory illustrates this point. What point? His terms langage, not language, lang and parole have never been satisfactorily translated into English. I mean, this point was that it is impossible sometimes to translate uh, certain tropes, certain linguistic elements, certain words from one language to another, which could have had been possible if there had been a universal language, if there could have been a naming process that could be that could be used to translate these words in, say, French into English directly. And he also says that and it is mentioned somewhere here, but I mean, I'm trying to use his term, but the language is not a nomenclature. Nomenclature means naming. So language is not just used for naming things. If it had been, then there could have been no other conceptions in language, which is false. So Saussure wanted to break this idea that language is only for naming. Language is absolute. Language means something in itself. So let's come to page number 958, the second para, which begins: language for Saussure is a structured system of conventional signs. I hope all of you have got this. If not, do tell me, do inform me that we are not on the same page, literally.
Could you please repeat the page number, sir?
Yeah, sure. It's page number 958 of the PDF that I think all of you have. Say, do you want me to like share the screen or something, or is it okay? I mean, we all have the text, right? Does anyone of you do not have the text? You can tell me, and I can like try to provide to you somehow. But since ma'am said that you were the text was shared in the group, I am assuming that all of us have the text.
আপনি বললেন এই বইটা 958 খান পেজেস আছে।
হ্যাঁ, 958 আমার যে পিডিএফটা যেটা আমি দিয়েছি সেটার 958 পেজ অবলিক ফার্ডিনান্ড de Saussure লেখা। এটা কি পাচ্ছ তোমরা? দেবপ্রসাদ, what is your issue?
না না, আমাদের এখানে তো মিশেল ফুকোর ইয়ে আছে দেখছি।
Oh, then you have like turned on the wrong PDF. So this PDF is actually named Norton Critical Anthology Saussure. Did you open that?
ও হ্যাঁ, পেয়েছি পেয়েছি।
Okay. Thanks to Onkon for pointing that out, whatever he pointed out, because I did not catch what he said. So are we literally on the same page, or are we like, groping around still? Devaprasad, is that okay? Is anybody facing any issue with the page numbers, or with wherever we are, where we want to be? Let me know.
I
if
found
you...
this.
Yeah?
I have got this.
Okay, great. And Ankita, you unmuted yourself. Any issues?
No, sir.
Okay, great. So you see in the so-called page number 958 and the second paragraph of the same page, you would find something which begins like this: language for Saussure is a structured system of conventional signs studied in their internal complexity as if frozen in time synchronically rather than as changing over time diachronically. So, uh, language, what is language for Saussure? I mean, how does Saussure see the language? I mean, if there is a question, if there is a topic that what is language for Saussure, how did Saussure define language, then we can quote from here, we can take this line and try to say that language for Saussure is a structured system of conventional signs studied in their internal complexity as if frozen in time synchronically rather than as changing over time diachronically. So Saussure thought, or for Saussure, it's a structured system, first of all. So it is not an unstructured system. Structured system simply means that there will be some rules of everything. And it's a system. So we cannot change the system whenever we want to, whenever we can, for our convenience, but it's a structured system which is well organized. Conventional signs, conventional, traditional, some signs that we all recognize. So if we are talking about written English, then we can say that there are like 26 letters in English alphabet, and they are all conventional, and no matter how bad our handwritings are or is, the examiner or the best friend always recognizes, or sometimes if we cannot recognize our own handwriting, sometimes an experienced teacher recognizes that this is a C not an E, this is not an R but an N, and then we, that's why because I mean we can recognize that because the signs are conventional. And there are some internal complexity, like every language has some internal complexities, and which does not change in time, which does not change at all. But if we need to study language historically, there are so many changes that occurs over a very short period of time sometimes. So Saussure saw the study of language as eventually forming part of a larger science of science in culture, which he called semiology, a field that later scholars went on to develop. So, linguistics or study of language for Saussure was a part of a larger project, was part of a larger discipline called semiotics, which can be called as the science of science. And science is like began of science chinno, science of science in culture. And structuralism and the study of language itself is a part of that. So I mean, we can go on reading this paragraph and try to learn from this. The atom of language is the sign which is functionally split into two parts: a signifier, sound image, and a signified concept. Here I will stop a while and I will try to ask you as to what you understand by this distinction that is made in the sign. So a sign is divided into two parts: signifier, signified. Could somebody volunteer to tell me what this signifier, the sound image, and the signified, the object, actually means? Can somebody give me an example? Well, since yes.
এই বিড়াল 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 বললাম, সিগনিফায়ার, বিড়াল বস্তুটা সিগনিফায়ার।
ওকে, সো বেড়ালকে বেড়াল যখন আমরা বলছি তখন আমরা শুনতে পাচ্ছি যে আমরা বেড়াল বেড়াল কথাটা বলছি, আর আমরা ওই বস্তুটাকে চিনি, ওই জীবটাকে চিনি যেটার নাম বেড়াল। And whenever we say these combinations of phonemes, or whenever we write the combination of the whenever we introduce the morpheme into our text, instantly, whether the biral is in the room or not, I actually have two bedals, but I have locked the room so they won't come in. Whether the bedal is in the room or not, whether the bedal is in front of you or not, you will have a mental image of the cat, of the bedal, that the word image signifies. So signifier is the word, is the collection of the letters, and the signified is the actual object, right? Now, my next query to you would be, say I use a word like anger. I can use the word anger. um, okay, I thought I lost connection. Is everything okay? Can you still hear and see me?
You are perfectly
Okay.
audible also.
Earlier there was a glitch.
Yes.
Okay, sorry for that. I mean, the connection was disrupted. So, as I was saying, that let me introduce another concept or another word. Say, when I say anger, 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 rag, then the word anger uh, does have. This is creating trouble. Sorry for this. This is the second time this happened. I don't know what is going on. There is a loss of connection at my end. I can see that. So I was, yes, I was talking about this word called anger. Okay. Now, anger is what? A signifier, right? And then, what is the object corresponding to anger? Can somebody volunteer to hazard a guess? Can somebody interact with me and tell me what is the object that is referred to when I say this word anger or rag?
So in case of abstract concepts, the result can be relative. We
Yes.
can imagine an angry face,
Mm-hmm.
or someone can relate to it to some other image.
Um, yes, that's a very good point that you introduced, Onkon. You used the word relative. That's really very cool. Uh, according to Onkon, when we say anger, the response, the object, the image that comes into our mind could be different, could differ from person to person. It could be a relative image, as Onkon pointed out, and not an absolute image. But say, Devaprasad used a word, bedal or cat. Now, Onkon, if you want to talk about a cat to a Chinese person who does not know English, who does not know Bengali or Hindi, these are the three usual languages we all kind of know. If you are talking to a Chinese person and if you are trying to tell that person about a cat, do you think, uh, sorry, this keeps happening, this network is playing truant today. Just let me know when you lose me, okay, just in the message or unmuting yourself. So Onkon, I was addressing you and I was trying to figure out, if you introduce the concept of, say, if you have a cat and you want to talk about your cat to a Chinese person or to a Swedish person or to a Japanese person, when you say cat or when you say bedal without the object,
So I
Onkon, do you
think
think? Yes.
I think you are facing audio glitch again. I didn't hear you in between.
Oh, sorry. Yes, there were some issues. Now, am I audible, Onkon?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So I was saying, I was asking you, since you introduced the term relative, I was asking you that if you meet a Chinese person who does not speak any of the languages you speak, or you do not know Chinese yourself, then when you say cat, he or she can hear the sound cat, right? Or beral or billi. But how will he respond, do you think, when you introduce the idea of cat or beral or billi to this foreign person who does not speak any of the languages we speak? What will happen, do you think?
He can ask me to explain what cats, and then
Yes.
I can either explain it in their vernacular, or I can uh, give him
Hmm. If the cat is not around, if there is a cat, then you can like point to the cat, and that person would easily understand, okay, so you are referring to this animal, right? Now you see, not only in the terms of, not only in the case of abstract concepts, but in the case of real concepts as well, all our sounds, all our meanings, all our sound images are also relative. It differs from culture to culture, it differs from language to language as to what is being referred to. And the confusion becomes greater when in our culture something, there is a word which is there, which is a word in their culture as well, which is a word in the culture of the foreign person whom we meet, but they mean very different things. And it has been acknowledged in Bengali as well, when somebody said that karur buli karur gali. If the word does not exist in a foreign language, then they would ask for more information about the word that you just said. But if it exists in another culture and it has some very different, sometimes maybe offensive meanings, then there might be an issue between you and the person to whom you just said something. So everything is relative, and this given connection between the sign and between the signifier and the signified has been questioned later on. But Saussure firmly believed that, um, I mean, the sign could be comprising of, the sign could comprise of a signifier, that is a word or an image, and the real object, or in the case of abstract things, a concept. As Onkon very correctly pointed out, that when we say anger, we might imagine an image in might come in front of us, which could vary as differently as different from each other, as say when I say anger, I imagine Hulk, because I'm a comic book enthusiast. And when I say anger, somebody might imagine an angry mom sitting right next to oneself, seeing whether you are doing the class or not, because you have been playing truant earlier. So this entire imagination, this entire sign, this entire signified or signifier, uh, another loss of connection. Sorry, I think there was another loss of connection. It keeps happening, and I'm sorry for this. Did you lose me in between, or was it going on?
স্যার মাঝে কি বললেন শুনতে পেলাম না মানে
ওকে, মাঝে আমি এটাই বলছি, আমি জানি না এটা শুনেছো কিনা, যে অ্যাঙ্গার কথাটার যে ইমাজিনেশনটা হয়, অ্যাঙ্গার কথার যে সিগনিফাইডটা হবে বা হওয়া উচিত, সেটা আমাদের পার্সন টু পার্সন ডিফার করতে শুরু করে, যেটা তুমিও বললে। মানে যখন কেউ অ্যাঙ্গার কথাটার ব্যবহার করে, তখন আমার মাথায় হাল্কের ইমেজটা আসে, হাল্ক দ্য কমিক বুক ক্যারেক্টার হাল্ক, আর কারোর মনের মধ্যে অন্য কোনো ইমেজ আসতে পারে। সো নট জাস্ট from culture to culture, but it can differ from person to person as well. Okay, Ankon, did you get me this time?
ইয়েস স্যার
Okay, cool. Just keep telling me if I am audible, or if there is any problem, at my end, because there could be some problem at your end which others will not share. But if there is some problem from my end, everybody would be losing whatever I was saying. So let's continue with the text. So the atom of language is the sign. So the basic building block of any language is the sign. Whether the sign is visual, or the sign is verbal, or the sign is tactile. I hope you all recognize what a tactile sign is. It is usually used by people with low vision or with no vision, people who are visually differently abled. But other than that, there is another aspect of the sign, which is the gesture. I can gesture something. Say for example, I can do this, okay, and this means okay, and this means Facebook like, and this means alright, this means so many things. But in Bengali culture, I don't know if you still use this to tease your friends, or maybe if you're too venturesome to tease your teachers or parents. If you shake it like this, then you might try to say that you are getting a kach kola or you are getting nothing. You will, but in another sign language, in another culture, this means good, and even if you shake it, it will still it still might mean good, but because they might not understand that you are actually telling them kach kola or something like that. So um, the sign is the atom of the language, and it is functionally split between two parts: signifier, sound image, and signified concept. You can like highlight these portions. So the relation between the signifier and the signified is arbitrary, not motivated by natural resemblance, even in cases of onomatopoeia, words that sound like what they mean. This is interesting. What is interesting? That all of these associations are actually arbitrary. Can you suggest me any word in any language? Like in any language means I know 3 languages, English, Bengali, and Hindi, not in the same order. But you can even try to use some other language, and we can go to Google and see if you are if you are right. Is there anything in any language which reflects the actual physical property of the word that is being produced or that is being associated with that object? মানে আমার প্রশ্নটা খুব সহজ এবং সরল, সেটা হচ্ছে যে আমরা টেবিলকে টেবিল বলি, ইংরেজিতে বলি টেবিল, বাট আমার প্রশ্নটা বা শ্বশুরেরও প্রশ্নটা এটা ছিল, বা যে কোনো লোকের প্রশ্নটা এটা হতেই পারে যে টেবিলের টেবিলত্ব কি? And if we stretch the logic a little bit further, a little back, when we say that A is written as A, and for that I might like draw imaginary A. Can you see the movement of my fingers? So I can draw an imaginary A. It's a capital letter A. But what is the inherent A-ness of A? Let alone words, what is the logic behind the letters that we find in once again
আবার কানেকশন প্রবলেম হয়েছে।
হ্যাঁ, এটা বারবার হচ্ছে, আমি কেন হচ্ছে বুঝতে পারছি না, but it was working fine just in the morning, but now it seems like it's giving me a lot of trouble. Sorry for that. So as I was saying, that language, in any language, we do not find any letter, we hardly find any correspondence between the object and the word and the image or the icon of the object or icon of the word that we are talking about, or icon of the real object that we are talking about, other than perhaps in Chinese language. because one of my students informed me that there is almost a corresponding pictographic image to every object that the Chinese people have, and there are of course corresponding um, signs or symbols or pictographic images to emotions, to abstract things as well. But I am still confused as to how do these objects, these different pictographic objects, can project, can show, say, degrees. Like, I am angry, he is angrier, she is the angriest. But then we are not talking about the Chinese language, but we are talking about the English language. And the English language, like any other language, maybe not Chinese, is arbitrary. Arbitrary simply means that whatever some people sometimes in the past decided that the A should look like A, the B should look like B, the C should look like C. But what is the logic behind this? Can somebody inform me? Can somebody help me out, or each other, by trying to say, by trying to understand what could be the logic behind these letters that we follow so religiously? Sometimes I mean, most of us are on Facebook or some other social media, and whenever we are having an argument, and if we do not see any relevant argument from our end, we try to see if the other person has typed in something wrong, if whether there is some spelling mistake, and we try to shut the other person down by saying that you don't even know how to spell a particular word. But when we imagine, when we realize that all of this language, all of these letters, which actually comprise the actual, all of these signs, which actually comprise the atom of the language, is arbitrary. I would like to give you a small homework, maybe, where you can find out words or even letters which might look like the things they are supposed to represent. I'm sure we will find a very hard time doing that. Okay, did I make sense of the things that I talked about? Because I already pointed out that the according to Saussure, language comprises of signs, and the sign can be divided into signifier and signified. Also, according to Saussure, that is the second point about Saussure's linguistic theory, that the language is arbitrary, which we already know, but we do not always acknowledge. Are these 2 points clear? If not, tell me. I'll try to repeat it in a way that might be more intelligible for you, because I want these things to be like completely clear. Yes, Dev Prashad.
Clear হয়ে গেছে।
Okay, great. So let's move on to something more internal, something more important about this whole system. So the word arbitrary means not that individual speakers can just make language up, but precisely that they can't. The sign is a convention that has to be learned and is not subject to individual will. So when they say arbitrary, that does not mean that there is no rule of formation of words or formation of letters. But some grandparent of ours, some grandparent of theirs decided for some reason that A should look like A or Z should look like Z. Or the dog should be called a dog, and the cat should be called a cat, and the beral should be called a beral. But there is no apparent logic, there is no apparent reason as to why this is so. However, and funnily, this is funny, we cannot change it. We have to say what is there in the language. Even if we can devise a very intelligent way to communicate by not using conventional signs, even then we might have to give in to the traditional system of the science that has already been established. You might say that what about the emoticons? What about the emojis? Don't they actually signify whatever we are trying to feel or whatever we are trying to say? Would you agree if I say that emojis are very user friendly, and emojis are very are not traditional or arbitrary, and emojis can really explicate our inner thoughts or emotions, or really explicate what I am exactly trying to say, because they are more visual, because they are more iconic, because they somehow imitate the emotions or the objects that we are trying to refer to. Would you agree to that, or would you say no? I mean, emojis are just another language, as traditional language is. What is your take on that?
ইনহেরেন্ট বা ইমপ্লাইড মিনিং কখনোই কোনো একটা ইমোজি মানে সেটা রিপ্রেজেন্ট করতে পারবে না
Mm-hmm.
যতদূর, কিন্তু ওই উপর উপর সুপারফিশিয়ালি
Mm-hmm.
করতে পারে একটা এক্সটেন্ট অবধি।
ওকে, একটা এক্সটেন্ট অবধি অ্যাটলিস্ট সুপারফিশিয়ালি
হ্যাঁ
আমি যেটা ভাবছি বা আমি যেটা বলতে চাইছি সেটা ইমোজি দ্বারা সম্ভব। ওকে, ডাজ এনিবডি
এবার
হ্যাভ ইয়েস?
হ্যাঁ মানে নট এন্টায়ারলি, কেননা এবার সমাজ কোনো কিছু পজিটিভ বা কোনো নেগেটিভ ভাববো, মানে বাইনারি অপোজিশনের কথা যে সবসময় আসবে এরকম কোনো না, অনেক সময় নর্মাল ভাবনাও আসতে পারে যেটার কোনো পার্টিকুলার কোনো ইমোশন থাকে না, আর সেটার জন্য কোনো ইমোজি থাকে না। কিন্তু যখন when it comes to a particular emotion, মানে আমি হাসি পেলো বা আমি খুশি হলাম, সেটার জন্য ইমোজি অ্যাভেলেবেল আছে। এবার ইমোজিগুলো দেখতেও মানে মুখের মতো, এবার আমরা হাসলে হেসে ফেলি, তো ফিলিং এর সাথে আমাদের মানে বাইরে যেটা আউটকামটা সেটা মিলে আছে, তো সেই ক্ষেত্রে এটা করতে পারে, কিন্তু নট এন্টায়ারলি।
Yes, very correct. Not entirely. I mean, there is no language yet designed that can really capture what we are feeling. Unfortunately or fortunately, কিছু তো মনের মধ্যে থাক, সব কিছুই যদি এক্সপ্লিকেট করে ফেলতে পারতাম তাহলে অনেক কিছুই ঝামেলা সৃষ্টি হতো, বা অনেক কিছু ঝামেলা হয়তো মিটে যেত। But again, see these emojis, see these emoticons. In fact, there is this Scottish person, I don't know if she's a lady or a gentleman. This person had written an entire novel using just emoticons, using just emojis. An entire novel, and I do not have the name right now, but there is one I can remember. There is this novel of Moby Dick, which was transformed, which was created into an emoji novel by some crazy person. I don't know, I can't remember the name of that person right now. But the thing is, emojis, which are more visual, as Devaprasad also pointed out, that they look like our faces, and I firmly believe that these emoticons were devised by something who is either bald like me, or going bald like me, or was like already bald, because all of these emoticons, these yellow emoticons, are all bald. I mean, most of them are bald, they don't have hair on their heads. But then I'm talking about emoticons and not about these what are these called, these meme, these animated GIFs or whatever they are, which are more emotive, which are more near to whatever we are trying to feel. Then let's move on to the next section by trying to understand what else is there, what else does Sasur want to say about these things. But before that, Devaprasad introduced a word called binary opposites. Devaprasad, would you like to say a little more about the binary opposites, or what binary actually means to you?
আমরা সবাই শিখেছি কম্পিউটারে যে 1 and 0, তো একটা আরেকটা উল্টো, এবার we have to define something. তো আমরা ইউজুয়ালি কনভেনশনালি যা করে থাকি যে ও তো কালো, কালোর যে কালোত্ব বোঝানো হচ্ছে এই কারণেই আমরা সাদা দেখেছি বলে। ও তো লম্বা তো এই জন্যই বোঝানো হচ্ছে কারণ বেটে দেখেছি বলে। তো ভালো কেউ খারাপ দিয়ে ডিফাইন করা, খারাপকেও ভালো দিয়ে ডিফাইন করা, এইরকম আর কি।
Okay, so yes, very correct, Devaprasad. Binary opposites uh, words mean words that are exactly opposite to each other. As Devaprasad pointed out, good, bad, black, white, tall, short, and these binaries actually, according to Saussure again, make up the entire structure of the language. According to Saussure, the language is a framework or a rubric of these binary opposites. We use all of these words in a kind of a structure, in a kind of a system, in a kind of a framework to mean something as opposed to something. And here, Saussure denied the fact that there is a given truth, there is a given basic meaning to something, because as you might already be reading about the post-colonial theory, where it can be applied really quickly, that for the Europeans the white represented good. But if the white represented good, then what should be its opposite? Because without the opposite, the word will not exist. So not only are these words, these signs uh, arbitrary, but these signs and these words are also in a relationship, which is the relationship of opposites. And it's funny that for a very long time it was considered, even in our culture, in our society, that it is only the opposite sexes that attract each other. It is only the opposites that can uh, form an alliance, yeah, as far as romantic or matrimonial relations are concerned. And structuralism, which will be talked about in detail in later classes, will also comment, will also create an opportunity for dialogues like these, like when it will be proved that these binaries are not actually binaries, but they are just elements that could be interchanged very easily and very quickly in the paradigmatic and syntagmatic relationships, which we will be discussing in relation to course in general linguistics, in relation to structuralism, in relation to the basic concepts of structuralism. Then we will realize that these binary opposites are also not adequate to signify whatever we are trying to signify. So today we learned just a little about who Saussure was. He was a linguist, he was a Swiss linguist. The name of his book and the year it was published, 1916, according to Norton Critical Anthology. And we also learned about what language is for Saussure and what his theory was trying to say about language, that it is made up of a sign, and the sign has two parts, and then they are the entire language is arbitrary, and there is no logic behind any word, any letter, or any of their combinations. But there are rules, which I think you have already learned in your PG1, because I was teaching PG1, I was discussing syntax with PG1 today, and I was trying to tell them that there are rules which are again arbitrary, but we cannot break them. All right. So from these three or two things that we discussed, do you have any questions? Do you have any doubts? Do you want me to repeat something? Or we can go to our GEC section. And ma'am, sorry, I think I lost connection. Are you guys there? Sorry, I lost connection. Are you guys still there?
Yes, now it's
Okay.
fine.
Okay, sorry for losing the connection. There's nothing much I can do about it. So do you wish to continue with I mean, though we should not, like, because there's this, now the class is for GEC, and we are supposed to discuss whatever is within GEC. But I was saying that if you have any questions with whatever we discussed right now, and I hope you took some notes of whatever we said, or underlined the important parts of that particular PDF that I wanted you to look at. If you have any questions, you can tell me, or we can go into the GEC section. As ma'am informed me that all of you are in GEC, like all of you have like taken up this GEC module. Okay. So since I do not see any questions, or since none of you have unmuted yourselves, we can go into the GEC section. But before going there, would you like to take a break for say 5 minutes? Because my lecture, as boring as it is, it might have like jammed your brains. Or do you want to like continue this torture for uh, another hour and then like go to sleep altogether, if you have not already fallen asleep? Everybody awake?
I have a question.
Yeah, sure. Devo
It
Prasad.
it may be or may not be a silly one, but I would like to.
Hmm.
আচ্ছা, যেটা বললেন যে কোনো কিছুকে ডিফাইন করতে গেলে তো অপোজিট লাগবে, বাইনারি অপোজিশন। তো হাউ উড ইউ ডিফাইন, মানে হাউ উড ইউ ডিফাইন দ্য অপোজিট, দ্য অ্যান্টোনিম অফ স্পেস টাইম?
Space and time. Space time.
স্পেস টাইম।
Okay, first of all, it's not me who said that binaries can be used to define something. It was
মানে অ্যাকর্ডিং টু
সসুর।
আমাদের
হ্যাঁ,
লিঙ্গুইস্টিক থিওরি।
লিঙ্গুইস্টিক থিওরির মধ্যে একটা অবসোলিট থিওরি, এখন একটা অবসোলিট হয়ে গেছে। সেই থিওরিটা বলছে যে সবকিছুই একটা বাইনারি রিলেশনশিপের মধ্যে রয়েছে। But your question is very fundamental. What is the opposite of space? What is the opposite of time, right? How am I going to describe non-time and non-space? Well, if this is a
না, স্পেস টাইম একটাই ওয়ার্ড।
okay, this the idea of space-time.
হ্যাঁ।
So the idea of space-time in itself is abstract, and as with all abstract categories, if you are asking me this question and not the theory, then I would say that it is impossible to create a binary for every word. In fact, I believe in the post-structuralist idea that words and terms are not in binary opposite to each other, but they are in a relationship with each other in a which can be, this relationship can be called an infinite replaceable relationship, where one word can be replaced with another without. Oh, Deva Prasad has left the meeting. Okay, but I can continue and he can like join in. So okay, there he's back. So the space time is a word, is a concept which cannot have, I mean according to me, cannot have a binary opposite to it. And if you are talking about a theory, if you're talking about an idea that is used in literature, then it is a macrocosmic, it's a macro idea. There could be like micro ideas which could be pit against space-time. Space-time can be pit against a micro idea of say psyche time. But other than that, I do not see as to how I can create a binary of, or I can explain space-time in terms of binary opposites, because I do not see, even if I divide space and time in two words, I cannot see what is the opposite of time or what is the opposite of space. Okay, Deva Prasad, if you are still there, does that somehow answer your question? Because if your question is, can there be a binary opposite? Can space time be described through binary opposites? Then I would say no. I mean, I cannot. Some other better theorist might be able to do that, but I cannot. Devaprasad, are you still with us, or is your connection playing, giving you trouble as well?
Audible?
Yes, you're audible. I lost you again. Like, you're inaudible now. Am I audible to everyone else, or is it's a, oh sorry, it's my problem. Sorry, I lost you in between. Yeah, okay. So Devaprasad, your answer, if you got whatever I was saying, is that there is no way in which binary opposites can be used to describe space-time. I mean, there is no way in which even we can use binary opposites to describe gender, or sexuality, or race either. We will discuss that in detail when we go into more theoretical concepts of binary opposites itself while talking about Saussure. Okay?
হ্যাঁ, না আমি আসলে কেন বলেছিলাম, বিকজ মানে আমাদের ইউনিভার্সে পুরো মানে তিনটে জিনিস খুব প্রয়োজনীয়, যেটা হচ্ছে মানে স্পেস, টাইম এন্ড মাস। তো মাস তো হচ্ছে গ্রহ উপগ্রহ, এবার বাদ বাকি যা আছে সেটা অ্যাকচুয়ালি নাথিংনেস না, সেটা অ্যাকচুয়ালি আছে, কিন্তু সে কি আছে, সেটা সময় আছে, স্পেস আছে। তো ওই জন্য বলেছিলাম যে এটার অপোজিট হবে কি হবে না, সেই জন্যই।
ও মানে যদি সায়েন্টিফিক টার্মিনোলজির কথা বলো তাহলে
এটা মানে সায়েন্টিফিক টার্মিনোলজি রয়েছে, এবং তার সাথে সাথে মানে এই লিঙ্গুইস্টিক ইয়েও এটাকে ডিফাইন করা সম্ভব, কিন্তু মানে আমি নিজেও জানতাম না বলেই জিজ্ঞেস করেছিলাম।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, মানে দেখো, যদি সায়েন্সের কথা আমরা বলি, যে সায়েন্স যদি কোনো সায়েন্টিস্টকে যদি জিজ্ঞেস করো যে হোয়াট ইজ দ্য অপোজিট অফ স্পেস, then that person would say that there is actually no opposite of space, but space can be opposed to the presence of something, and new theories are coming up which are saying that nothing is nothing, like there is either antimatter or black matter or dark matter which is fulfilling all the vacant spaces that there are. But time is a very difficult concept, I think, even for scientists, কারণ ব্ল্যাক হোলের কনসেপ্ট দিয়ে যদি দেখা যায় যে টাইমটা কি ওখানে এক্সিস্ট করছে, বা গ্র্যাভিটি যত বাড়বে টাইম কি তত স্লো হয়ে যাচ্ছে, তাহলে কি গ্র্যাভিটির একটা পয়েন্ট টাইমের অপোজিট যেখানে টাইমলেসনেস আছে, যেখানে ইভেন্ট হরাইজন আছে? সো দিস ইজ আ ভেরি থিওরিটিক্যালি ডেন্স thing that I will not be able
মাঝখানে
to.
কিছু না গেল না।
Oh, sorry. It, my connection is really poor today. Sorry, my connection is really poor today, and I was just saying that sorry. Okay, so this thing will keep on creating trouble for me, like this connection, because once it starts creating some kind of problem, it will keep on creating problems. So Devaprasad, we will talk about more about these things in our next class, but today we have to go into this GEC section, and you can always talk to me over phone or over WhatsApp. You can ask ma'am for my number, or if you want my number, I can like give it to you right now, and you can always connect to me, and we can discuss more about it, because I am very interested in this concept of time and what is its opposite. Okay, so let's move into the GEC section, but I think many of you have already gotten your break, because the Devaprasad and me were engaged in some theoretical discussion. So let's move into this GEC section, and within the GEC section I will be dealing with Plath, 3 poems from Sylvia Plath, and 3 poems from Dickinson. Okay, so do you already have this selection of poems? I lost connection again. Do you already have the selection of the poems that I mentioned to ma'am, so that she could tell you? Could somebody confirm if you have the names of the poems and if you also have the texts of the poems with you, which is very easily available in the internet? Am I audible? Hello? Hello? Are you guys with me, or is it like another network glitch? Hello? Could somebody confirm if I am still audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I was asking you if you guys know which texts I am going to, like, which texts I have selected. There are just three poems of Emily Dickinson and three poems of Sylvia Plath. Can somebody confirm if you have that selection? Okay, in case you are not sure of what I am saying, I'll just put in the poems that I am supposed to discuss with you guys. So from Plath, I hope you can see the chat box. I have put in something in the chat box, and this is the selection of the poems that we are going to do from Plath. That is from the poetry section. From Plath, I am going to discuss Ariel, Colossus, and Daddy. And from Dickinson, I am going to discuss Because I Could Not Stop for Death, The Soul Selects Her Own Society, and I Felt a Funeral in My Brain. Let me know in the chat box if this is, if you can, like, if you see this, and if you already know that this is the selection that we are going to discuss. Somebody just write yes or whatever. Okay, great. Okay, great. So I will begin with Dickinson. But before beginning with Dickinson, I would like to know your perspective or your take on this is American literature, this is American poetry. I would like to hear a few things from your end as to what makes American poetry different from, say, English poetry, or we can, in coming back to our assignment, I would also like to hear what you already have read about Dickinson, what you already know about Dickinson, what you have already, which poems of Dickinson all of you have read. So generally what I do in my class is I like call names, and I ask the person I can see on my screen to talk to me or give a particular answer to a question that I have. But I understand that this is the first time we are meeting, and I don't want to make enemies out of you by, you know, making you speak without your consent. So I will do it later when we are more friends with each other, where we can interact more without inhibitions. But before doing that, I would offer my hand of friendship, and I will not make you suffer by compelling you to talk. But could somebody other than Devaprasad and Onkon and Onkita, because these guys were speaking to me, I also want to interact with all the other people who are present here, to tell me if they, whatever they know about American poetry, American literature in a brief manner, or about Dickinson, which, oh, shoot. Okay, there was a network disconnection again. Sorry, and I was saying, if anybody other than Onkita, Onkon, or Devaprasad would like to say something about American literature, American poetry, or Dickinson in particular. Anyone other than Onkita, Devaprasad, and Onkon? I'm not taking names right now. but later I will ask people who I can see on the screen to respond. It is not mandatory for you to respond. You can just say, no, I don't want to speak. Or you can tell me something in the chat box as well. Because many of us are shy of speaking. And as I pointed out, that it is okay to speak in Bengali, because uh, our purpose here is to understand each other and not to inform each other as to how much English we can speak, which is not useful anyway. But anybody who would like to venture and who would like to say, tell me something that they know about American literature, poetry, and Dickinson in particular, or should I take names? Okay, this is getting on my nerves now. This is happening like too often. I think there is some loose connection somewhere which is making this network go haywire. Okay, so all right. So I would introduce, or I would like to talk about American literature for a brief while, just a bit, and then into American poetry, and then into Dickinson. So could somebody tell me what is the point of origin, or could somebody give me a brief introduction to American literature, or where did this American literature begin? Can somebody point to a particular aspect of American literature? Anyone? Well, in this case, I was talking about these emojis, and when this happens, yes, Onkon.
আমরা মানে ওগুলোই তো শুরু হয়েছে।
কবে শুরু হয়েছিল? I lost contact, I lost connection and didn't hear you.
নেটিভ যে ওরাল স্টোরি টেলিং ছিল এই তো মানে আর্লিয়েস্ট এক্সটেন্ট অফ আমেরিকান লিটারেচার বলা যেতে পারে।
Okay, that's very well pointed out, Onkon, that we usually take the English settlers and their literature to be the point of origin of American literature. But if we are talking about American literature, then of course the oral stories told by the native people, the native tribal people over there, is actually the beginning of American literature, which is lost to us, which is lost to even their own descendants. Yes, very good, Onkon. Someone else who would like to talk more about this English lineage of American literature? Deva Prasad, you might go, because no one else seems to be unshy as opposed to shy, or bold enough to interact.
Could you please repeat the question?
Yes, the question is, we are dealing with American literature, and we are supposed to know a bit about the history, about the background of the poet, or of the Dev Prasad unfortunately has left the meeting. So whenever this happens, whenever I ask this question or these questions, and people do not respond, yeah, I can understand. This is becoming really troublesome. This connection is really unstable now. It's like happening within seconds. Like I'm speaking and it is going out and then coming back. Am I audible right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Unfortunately, we are not having a good time with the network. So we need to know. We need to be aware of the background. We need to be aware of where certain things came from. Onkon pointed out that the actual beginning of American literature should be traced back to the oral stories of the tribals, the traditional people living over there. But what about the English lineage? Can somebody point to me towards the English lineage of American literature. And Onkon was trying to say something. No, Onkon was not saying because he already pointed out about the oral tradition. Well, if we want to go back to the origins of American English literature, then it began somewhere in the it began with the Puritan literature. The Puritans were writing not really poems for entertainment or for pleasure or to express their agony, but they were. Yes, Onkita, you have something to say? I see you are unmuted.
হ্যাঁ স্যার দেড় অনেকক্ষণ ঢোকার চেষ্টা করতে ঢুকতে পারছে না।
অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমি এটার কন্ট্রোলে নেই, বাট একবার যদিও জয়েন হয়ে থেকে থাকে তাহলে ওই তো চলে এসছে, দেবপ্রসাদ ইজ ব্যাক। ওকে, so I think it was like an error from Devaprasad's end, that his connection was not stable, as it is not stable from my end. Okay, so the Puritans were writing literature, and it is somehow understood or thought to be the beginning or the first instances of literature in the American soil by not American citizens per se, but people who had come from England and had settled into USA. Gradually it underwent a lot of changes, it underwent a lot of developments, and the developments that are associated with whatever was happening in Europe. So as you know, that as you have found out, as you have seen from your research on Dickinson, from the little things that you have collected already on Dickinson, could somebody tell me in which age, like in when I say age, I'm not talking about the age in American literature, which might be different from the age in the English literature, but roughly speaking, during which age was Emily Dickinson writing? Anybody can answer, anybody can like type in the chat the age, because I'm sure that some of you are familiar with these history of English literature and the ages therein. Could somebody point that out? So I lost connection again, and I don't know if somebody messaged me, but I lost connection and I do not see any message here in the chat box. So somebody can unmute and say if they can point out to a particular age, to the particular age in which Dickinson was writing. And when I'm saying age, I mean the age of English literature, not the age of American literature.
romantic age.
Romantic age. Okay, does anybody have a different opinion? If you look at the lifespan of
ভিক্টোরিয়ান এজ শুরু হচ্ছে, রোমান্টিক এজ শেষ হচ্ছে, এরকম একটা ইনসেপশনে।
yes যদি দেখো, Dickinson was born in 1830, if I'm not wrong, and she died maybe in 1882, or if not earlier. So while she was growing up in the Victorian age, but when I say Victorian age, that cannot be applied to the American literary scene, because Queen Victoria was not ruling America. So Victorian age is not a right terminology for the age in which Emily Dickinson was writing. However, where from or what influences do you think influenced Dickinson? Like if I ask you guys which pop artist or which movie star or which singer influences you, or which movie artist or singers or artists, pop artists, hip hop artists influence you, what should be your typical answers. You can type your typical answers in the chat box, and I would encourage everyone, whoever is in the meeting, to start chatting with me, start a kind of a conversation, because conversation is always good for um, the mental exercise of learning. So if you are like shy and you do not want to like unmute yourself and talk to me directly, you can chat in the chat box. You can like drop your messages in the chat box. So who do you think is your pop sensation, or who do you think is like your pop god or music guru or something like that? Whoever they are, I mean, you might be thinking about them, you might be writing them down. Oh,
Hello.
yes, I lost connection for a while and I can hear you now. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this is really unfortunate that we are having this issue. What I was saying that whatever gurus we follow, whatever pop sensations, whatever movie stars we want to follow, there is a possibility that we will not be enmeshed only in our immediate culture, but we might be following some foreign culture as well. And as you might know very well, that America as a culture was much influenced by Europe, especially England. And among the influences of Dickinson, Victorian poetry, Victorian literature did have a huge impact. Although, as Onkon pointed out, that the romantic literature was also, Dickinson was introduced to romantic literature as well. And she was writing during the Victorian age according to English literature, not according to American literature. But we will try to take a stock of the situation that was there in the or during the Victorian era, during this era that she was writing in. And it seems I have lost connection once more. I don't know what to do.
মাঝখানটায় কিছু শুনতে পেলাম না।
I lost connection. I don't know what to do. Just give me a minute. Just let me look into this stupid router and the modem. I don't see any problem. I don't see why it's happening. I don't know what's wrong. Just give me another minute. Let me put myself on mute and let me stop my camera for a while. तुमने क्या अपना कंप्यूटर ऑन किया है अनुराधा? Okay, I don't think the problem is due to something that is there with the device or devices, but I think the problem is coming from the end of the service provider. And I'm really very sorry that this is happening. It is a boring lecture with a boring person like me, and if you have these internet connection errors, it becomes really very problematic. One of the downsides of online classes. Sorry for losing your interest in between. So I was saying that she had the influence of both the romantic poets like Wordsworth, and she was also influenced by the Victorian writers like Emily Bronte, her namesake. So Dickinson as a poet was unique in a number of ways. She was a person who did not or who could not publish more than 10 of her poems while she was alive. Most of her poetry, most of her poems were published after her death, and after like a period of 8 or 9 years, because and then there was this issue with the edition or editing of those poems, because the people who published her poems were apprehensive of the fact that these poems might let out more than the well-to-do family could take. So there were a lot of cuts, there were a lot of censorship that was done over Emily Bronte's poems, and as I said, that she has like 800 of them, 1800 of them, 1800 poems, but during her lifetime only 10 of them were published. And when even then the poems were published, even after her death or during her lifetime, they were heavily edited, because as Onkon pointed out, that Dickinson might have been influenced by the romantic strain of literature as well. We can question each other, we can stop and think for a moment as to what is this romantic strain that influenced Dickinson a lot, and why was this heavy editing had to be done on her poems by the publishers, which included their own family members. One of the basic features of this romanticism, one of the basic features of romantic poetry is its subjectivity. I is important. I fall upon the thorns of life, I bleed. It seems as if my heart aches, and these famous lines, and these are very subjective in their presentation of the self. And Dickinson's poetry approached the possibility, or approached the condition of confessional poetry, which later Sylvia Plath also takes up. She is also known as a confessional poet. I know you might have missed something in between because there was a network loss. So I was saying that romantic poetry is about subjectivity. Romantic poetry is about talking about the self, and there is a confessional strain in romantic poetry which influenced Dickinson to a large extent. And she was also, as I said, was influenced by the Victorian way of looking at things, because she was born during the Victorian era and she was writing during the Victorian era, so she could not deny any Victorian influences. However, like many romantic poets, like many romantic poems, some of the themes that she interrogates in her 1800 poems include death, immortality, society, loss, and a number of other issues. But most of the poems actually talk about these themes, these broad themes, and death is the most important theme of Emily Dickinson. Like, she was always talking about death, immortality, and she was also in her poems you would find a picture of the society. Now, another thing that is quite famous, or that we should take into our consideration whenever we are talking about her, is that she was a loner. She went into seclusion when she was around 30, and she did not want to socialize. She did not want to talk to the people who came to visit her. She did not want to be a part of anything that had society in it, and she had secluded herself completely. And she would hardly get out of her house. She would hardly meet people. However, she did carry out a lot of conversation via letters. And if you really want to understand much about Dickinson, then you should go to the collection of the letters that are there, published letters of Dickinson, which will give you a very insightful understanding of what Dickinson is all about, or what her poems or what her poetry is all about. I don't know what to do. I don't know. It's becoming real.
Hello, sir.
Really. Yes, I know. I lost you.
Hello, বলছি, have you
Hmm.
turned off your camera?
No, I have not turned off my camera,
But
but I think because
you
of
can,
this.
you can, কেননা আপনারও তাহলে সুবিধা হবে, আর আমারও আসলে না ডাটা প্যাকটা শেষ হয়ে গেছে, তাই
Oh,
জন্য ভুলভাল হচ্ছে অনেকক্ষণ ধরে। আর আমি মানে আপনার
okay.
ক্যামেরা হয়তো অন আছে, আমি দেখতে
Hmm.
পাচ্ছি না কিছুই এখানে।
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, okay. I will turn off my camera. Give me a minute. So let me see if this helps our bandwidth better. I mean, the camera might have been creating a lot of problem, but in this online situation, which you are quite familiar with, I mean, even if you do not have a face in front of you, at least, I mean, as ugly as I am, but even a face is good enough for you to like keep looking at the screen, which is problematic. Is it better now, Deva Prasad, for you?
ফাইন।
Okay, all right. So I'm sorry that your data pack is over and our class isn't. Um, as I was saying, that she had gone into seclusion for from the age of around 30, but she carried out her conversations. She talked about her issues very well in her letters. So I would suggest that if you can get I can suggest you names of books in a class, in another class, where you can go into the books and read them, and you can form your ideas about her themes, about her style, about whatever she was trying to say, um, in a better way. So letters are really the key to her inner mechanics or her psyche. Now, as far as her technique or as far as her style is concerned, she uses a slant rhyme. I will type it out in the chat box so that my pronunciation does not come in the way of your understanding. It's slant rhyme here. I hope all of you can see the chat box, and it's called the slant rhyme or an imperfect rhyme. It has many names: imperfect rhyme, and in a used in a more sustained manner, it came to be known as assonance. So what happens in a in a imperfect rhyme is that deliberately the author, the poet, uses certain words which do not rhyme perfectly. Like the last two lines, the last two words of of succeeding lines do not rhyme with each other, because the poet deliberately uses a word where either the syllables, either the consonants will be different or the vowels would be different. And we will see the examples of the same in the first poem that we will be uh, looking at. Okay, so I hope you have the poem called The Soul Selects Her Own Society. If anybody does not have the poem, it's a short poem and I can like put it in the chat box. It's okay if I think it will help if it is there in the chat box. The Soul Selects Her Own Society, and this is the poem number 303, 303, and it was written in 1862 and it was published in 1890. It was the first time that her poems came out. Okay, so if you can see the chat box, and you do not have to go to other application in order to see the poem. You can see the poem right in the chat box now. So the soul selects her own society, and it is the poem number 303, and it was written in 1862, and it was first published in 1890. So uh, the 303 or the 303 actually refers to the number of the poem in the series of those 100, 1000 and 800 poems that she wrote altogether. Okay, and I would like to go chronologically, at least as far as possible, because this is 303, and then there will be another one which is 300 something, and then 479, like that. So I think they were written chronologically. They were written according to time, like first 303 was written, and then the other poem, and then the other poem, but I'm not sure about that. Okay, so the soul selects her own society, and this is a direct reference to the seclusion, or to the self-inflicted solitude, to the self-inflicted isolation that um, Dickinson imposed on herself. Many scholars, many researchers, many people, including you, it might be the case that you too would imagine as to why would Dickinson go into this seclusion, as to why she would go for her own isolation. Some researchers have pointed out that she could be facing some kind of uh, a psychological issue called agoraphobia, which is kind of binary opposite, I mean using binary opposite again, of claustrophobia. Whereas you all very well know about claustrophobia, that somebody who is afraid of confined spaces will not be very comfortable in a lift, or will not be comfortable staying alone. And the opposite scenario, if not the opposite word, of claustrophobia might be agoraphobia, which might mean that somebody is afraid of open spaces. They might feel that they are not secure in open spaces. They are not um, they cannot escape easily from a public place, like maybe a cinema hall, or a park, or a coffee house, or something like that. Okay, so this selecting her own society, and this is a reference, this is an allusion to the fact that that Dickinson wanted to stay alone, and she had very select company, and she chose not to socialize. Imagine if Dickinson had been alive today, and she chose not to have a WhatsApp number, if she chose not to have a Facebook or Instagram profile, if she chose not to have a mobile phone, I mean, let alone she would not be able to do any classes whatsoever, we would consider that person to be mad. We would consider that person to be crazy. We still say to people who do not have their WhatsApp numbers, or who do not use WhatsApp or Facebook or Twitter or some kind of social app, we say to ki pagol naki. We all use it, and we should you should be there, so that we could connect more sorry, we could connect more easily. But she was in that age a person who did not want to socialize, and the title itself refers to that situation. And a peculiar thing about her poetry is that she never wrote any title for her poetry. And this poem is the first line of the title is the first line of her poem. I am sure that you already know about this from your Shakespearean sonnets, because Shakespearean sonnets, Shakespeare also never gave any title to his sonnets, right? And the first line became the title. So if there is any issues, if there is any queries about the title of the poem, you could say this particular thing, these two things that I already mentioned. So the soul selects her own society. So the soul achieves a kind of an automaton. The soul achieves a kind of autonomy. The soul is conscious, but many psychologists believe, or it's a generally held idea, that our soul itself is not something that can do anything. I would really like to hear your idea about the soul, and you can, as I said, always type in the chat box, or you can unmute and speak about the soul. But some would say that soul is the moving power of the body. It is the soul which does everything. And some would say no, it's the mind which does everything. But here, ironically, I would say in a paradox, the soul is selecting her own society. What is the paradox in this line? Why am I hinting, why am I saying, not just hinting, why am I saying that there is a paradox in the line, the soul selects her own society? What is the paradox? Can somebody point that out to me? Or should I like ask someone of you to like unmute and maybe speak? Is that okay? Or will you be very angry at me if I ask you to do that? Okay, I'll do that. I'll take that risk, because we are already 2 hours into our friendship, and barring the network connections, we were having a good time. So okay, Ochishman Ghosh, are you there? Orchishman Ghosh, are you there? Okay, you can like not unmute, and you can say, you can not respond. That's absolutely okay. But I'll like I would like to hear more from you than like just speak from one end. It's like, I want it to be an interactive class rather than just a one-way traffic from me to you. Okay, so Orchishman has not responded. Devolina, I'm like going on the kind of thing that I have here. Devolina, would you like to hazard a guess? Would you like to unmute and speak to me, or speak to your friends? No? Shagota? No? Okay, I got your message then. I'm sorry, I do not want you to feel any pressure. I do not want to give any pressure to you, and I hope you would understand gradually that with me, it is not a pressure situation. Okay, I like to fancy myself as a very approachable and a very friendly facilitator of learning. So you can like be friendly with me. You can be friends. Okay, so I am sorry if I just like took your names, because I see the first few names as these, or Chishman, Devulina, and Shagota. So um, uh, but still, would someone else try to say or try to point out what's the irony or what's the paradox in the very first line, where it is said the soul selects her own society? There are two words which can stand opposite to each other. One is the soul and the other is the society. Okay, Shagota has answered. Okay, I'm sorry. No, it's okay. It's okay. It's
Hello,
not a
sir.
problem. Yes, Dev Prasad.
What was your question?
The question was, there is, according to me, there is an irony. There is a paradox in the very first line of the poem, and we are stuck there. And Shagota, she tried to answer me, or is it? Is it Shagota or is it
Could you
Shagoto?
could you please recite for me
Yeah,
that
yeah,
particular line, because
sure.
আমি ক্যাপশনে কিছু দেখতে পাচ্ছি না।
হ্যাঁ, কারণ ক্যাপশন মানে তুমি যখন আবার জয়েন করছো না, তখন ওই মেসেজটা থাকছে
হ্যাঁ
না।
হ্যাঁ, আমি তখনও দেখতে পাইনি আসলে।
আমি আবার ওই পুরো জিনিসটা আবার চ্যাটে পেস্ট করে দিচ্ছি, যাতে যারা হয়তো বেরিয়ে যাচ্ছিল তাদের সুবিধা হবে। আর আমি একটা জিনিস দেখছি যে ভিডিওটা অফ করে দেওয়ার পরে নেটওয়ার্কটা স্টেবিলাইজ করেছে। থ্যাংক ইউ দেবপ্রসাদ ফর গিভিং মি দ্যাট টিপ। আমার মনে হয় ভিডিওটার জন্য হয়তো কিছু সমস্যা হচ্ছিল। থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ। নাও দেবপ্রসাদ, ক্যান ইউ সি দ্য চ্যাট বক্স অ্যান্ড ক্যান ইউ সি দ্য ফার্স্ট লাইন অফ দ্য পোয়েম?
নট ইয়েট, অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমার
Oh.
নেটওয়ার্ক কানেকশনটা সাংঘাতিকভাবে খারাপ।
ওকে 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 ওকে, অলরাইট। তাহলে লাইনটা হচ্ছে সরি, লাইনটা হচ্ছে দ্য সোল সিলেক্টস হার ওন সোসাইটি। দ্য সোল
এখানে
সিলেক্টস।
প্যারাডক্সটা আমি অ্যাকচুয়ালি শুনতে পেয়েছিলাম তখন, আমি সেই জন্যই আমি উদ্গ্রীবভাবে বললাম যে সোল আর সোসাইটি দুটো কমপ্লিটলি একে অপরের সাথে মানে
Oh, he has left. Okay, so that's the problem with connections. So he was saying something about the completely opposite. Soul and society, if you think about it, the soul is something that resides within. The soul is a very private thing. The soul is something that is not for the society. The soul is the repository of secrets. The soul is something that is very personal, and it is not something that should be there in the society. The society is something that is shared, that is communal. But soul is singular, soul is personal, soul is secretive, soul is individual, and it is the soul, according to some people, which gives a kind of individuality to um, people. And would you excuse me just for a minute? There is somebody at the door and the doorbell is rung. Just give me a minute. Sorry for that interruption. So soul, as I was saying, is not something that is for the society, and soul is something individual and personal. Okay. So this, how is it that the soul selects her own society? And also look at the choice of the personal pronoun her. She assumes, Dickinson assumes, that the soul, since it is her soul, even the soul has a gender. But if you have read, if you have come across Paradise Lost, or even Rape of the Lock in your undergraduate days, which I'm sure either one of you have read, is tells that soul does not have, or these soul is something that is genderless. And even in Hindu mythology, it is said that a soul can take up a body. So a female soul can take up a male body, or a male soul can take up a female body. But here Dickinson confirms that her soul is of her own gender, which is quite significant, and she selects her own society. However, given the Victorian era restrictions on women, even America during that time was pretty conservative. And I already pointed out that Dickinson's poems were heavily edited by the people who published those poems. Why? Because they were found to be inappropriate to be published publicly, because she had said things, she had written things which could have had rubbed the society in the wrong way. And it was perhaps very correct of Dickinson to select her own society, because the society out there was not yet ready to accept her. Because if you read a little more about Dickinson, recent research has hinted that Dickinson had a kind of a romantic relationship with her sister-in-law Susan, and that's why she was not really interested in the society which did not conform to her differences in sexual orientation. We can speculate a lot about this, but let's come back to the poem. But look at how each and every word in this short poem actually tells something about the society, because one of our themes of poetry is society, and also tells something about her own self. So the soul selects her own society. The soul determines which society the soul wants to stay in. And Dickinson chose a very selective society. She did not choose the society of the outer world. She never married, she never went out of her house. Then shuts the door to her divine majority. So, after the soul selects her own society, then the door is shut. No one else is allowed to enter into that elite society. There is a rupture in communication. There is a break in the way in which Dickinson and her soul and the outer society communicated. Then shuts the door to her divine majority, present no more. Divine majority. Now that is a very interesting phrase, divine majority, and the M is kind of the M of the majority has been capitalized without any particular reason, or is there reason to that, or the door or the society, they are all like put in caps. Her divine majority. So it is still a she is still in possession, she is still using a possessive pronoun to tell that the society that there is, the society that she has chosen, the group of people that she has chosen to be the soul mates, to be the mates of her soul, are for her a majority, and this majority is divine, godlike. So in this society, either it can mean two things. Either this is, in her society, the majority of the people are divine or godlike, and that is why she has chosen them. Or inversely, it might mean that to her, divine majority present no more. That means people who are outside her periphery, who are outside her circumference, and who form the actual society, consider themselves to be divine, consider themselves to be godly, whereas people who live in seclusion or people who do not talk to other people might be considered to be mad, or mad again is a category of evil which we will learn in archaeology of knowledge. I mean, Foucault did talk about madness and civilization, and there he does talk about the fact that mad people were often considered to be evil people, and we are afraid of mad people sometimes. So this divine majority could imply two things. First, this majority is inside her soul. She had selected a society which for her is divine, and the divinity, the divine like and the god like people are in majority in that society. But present no more brings us to another aspect of this divine majority, which might mean that the majority which is outside, she is a minority. Poets are always minority. She is a minority because she is secluded, because she is an individual, because she is within a single room. in her, or in her presence, the majority which thinks that they are divine is not present. It could mean both of the things. Now we have come to the end of our time, and I will not prolong this torture any further, and will end the class now. But before we end it, if you have any questions, and I'm sure if you have any questions, other people are going to like kill you, because you're hearing me for like the last 2 hours, and this is like too much. I know, I understand. So we can put our questions, we can postpone our questions to the next class we will be meeting. You can write them down, and you can like ask them in the next class. But if it's something really very urgent, and you think you're safe in your homes, not because you won't be beaten up by your peers, you can ask a quick question, and I can try to answer it. Otherwise, we can end the class, and you can all go to whatever you want to do right now, and we can meet next class. Okay, so since I have not received any question in the chat box, or somebody has not unmuted, the message is loud and clear. Enough is enough. 2 hours is more than enough of your chatter, and we can end this class. Okay, so good night for tonight, and you may leave the meeting, and I will leave the meeting as well. Thank you so much for giving me your attention for so long.